My name is Fernando Lasso. I'm your host, and with me today is Ilias Thermos. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here, man.
Ilias is a well-known dancer from Greece. I think you have a nice career where you have spent a few years in Milan. Before that, you were dancing with La Secta. Now you teach in Athens. You're an international artist, so you travel to different events. Does that cover it?
That's mostly all. I trained mostly with Dimitris here in Athens. I was a part of his group for many years. We traveled together a lot. And after that, I decided to move to Milano.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my main mentor and inspiration, Adolfo, used to live. I trained with them. I joined the group for a while. And after that, I started my own solo career.
Great. All right, so we have a few topics today on the menu, and it relates to gender dynamics in the salsa scene, female leadership, the power dynamics in teams, in dance teams. I think in the salsa scene, we see more and more movements that advocate for female leadership.
Mhm.
Just before this podcast, I also did an interview with Maria in which we talked about how important it is to empower female artists to gain the confidence to tackle bigger projects, take more leadership, maybe direct teams, or take the leading role even in partnerships where we often see men as dominating the discourse or the dynamic in the team. What is your opinion on that?
I believe it's a fair point to be made that girls usually don't have the confidence to take these roles. But I think we focus too much on gender, and we should focus more on the ability of someone to lead. Leadership should go to the most capable. And when we are talking about a couple or a choreography or something like that, usually the guys have more experience to choreograph because this is the lead's role. If we say that the lead is a guy, sometimes the lead is a girl, and let's say like Noelia, you know her from Spain.
Yes, of course.
She's a dope leader. She does stuff I think even I can do. But I would say that leadership should go to the most capable. Even if that's not only choreographing, maybe that's people skills or who is more composed, who is more relaxed, who is more logical, more empathetical. It shouldn't be only guys or girls. I tend to believe the most capable should be the one who gets this role.
Given that we are in a scene where most of the directors of teams, dance school owners, and event organizers are men, don't you think that does create a more difficult position for women to prove their worth? Do you not think the men automatically, by the status quo, will give other men better opportunities than they give to women?
That is, again, a fair point to be made, but I would disagree that the majority is male. Maybe up top at 1%, it's mostly male.
Of organizers?
Of organizers and then, let's say, dance schools, because I work at a lot of dance schools who have a female in charge, and they still do good. But it's only a small percentage of men in these places. There are a lot of men who are not so far up, and many women who are better than guys in getting paid more and have more opportunities. I don't actually agree with the statement that it's mostly guys who run things. It's pretty much equal on lower levels. Maybe at the top, it's mostly guys. But again, to be top 1% in everything you do, you need to be really hardworking, really disciplined. You need to be a bit crazy about what you do. And this is my personal opinion, but I tend to think these are qualities that guys are more willing to risk more to achieve these kind of positions. Also, I know a lot of women who, after a while, they choose to have a family. These are not every woman, but some women choose to have a family over, let's say, 30 or 35. And that is the point that you get to push beyond, let's say, the intermediate level and go to really advanced or, let's say, mentorship level.
If we look at the discourse in the salsa scene, we can definitely see that in the last year and more throughout the years, we see more voices coming up for the empowerment of women, but also for speaking up about abuse in the scene, abuse of power dynamics. If I can drop a name, for example, the Not Just Chisholm movement in the US that was started about a year ago, and more people coming out, for example, on social media, expressing how they felt psychologically or sometimes even physically abused in team. Usually these are women speaking up. If you say that there is not currently a problem for women to be able to achieve any level that they want, how do you explain these types of movements coming up?
I think they bring awareness to the issue, and awareness is a good thing. You can have more properly informed choices when you're picking out to join a group. If you know that the group has some, let's say, abusive guys in them, you shouldn't be willing to join them. And these groups exist to protect people from going or messing with people who are not so credible. But I think they shouldn't be used to attack other artists, or maybe someone can use it to attack the competition.
So,
Let's say, sorry to interrupt you, but let's say that I own a dance school and I have a group. And some girl in the group, for X or Y reason, she's not good enough, and I have to kick her out. And then because she's jaded, she comes up with a story. I'm not saying that's every case, but let's say something like this happens. She comes up with a story that people there were abusive or anything. And there is another school which is competitive to mine who wants to take advantage of that and do damage to my reputation. We have also to be able to protect people from that as well. What I believe is that these are good things that are happening to bring out awareness, but we shouldn't take an accusation as a fact. We should look into it more. I agree that's a fair point, but not take it as a fact because I say something, it should be a fact.
I think there's two paths we can take here. One is to discuss, you say it's good to make people aware of how things go in certain teams. And then the question is there an inherent flaw in how the system works, or is it just how it works and we need to accept how it is and deal with it? And the second point is, how do we deal with cases where people speak up? And the approach that you suggest, we need to be careful to not wrongly accuse people. Of course, this is a common topic in any subject related to
Domestic
domestic
yes.
abuse, where we see, of course, we need to be careful for false positives. But where's the priority? And as a society, who in a case of where we need to give someone the benefit of the doubt, where do we lean towards? I first want to go to the first topic about what is inherently the way it should be in teams. If, for example, someone speaks up and says that their director uses their position of power in the team to affect the dynamics in ways that are not necessarily for the art itself. For example, making sexual advances or other practical demands that they put on their dancers.
First of all, I don't have such a successful group, so I can only, let's say my opinion on what I think a successful group should do. I've been part of many groups over the years. I've seen a lot of patterns. And I tend to believe that in order to become one of the best groups, you need to sacrifice being good all the time. But I might find abusive in a training sense, not in a sexual way. For some might be necessary in order to become one of the best. Let's say long hours of training, not focusing so much on how I feel, but what needs to be done. This must be necessary, let's say, concepts in order to go to the next level or not. That's up to the individual director to choose what kind of team she wants to make. And if we see a lot of people at the top having the same principles on hard work and pushing people to the limit, I cannot be the one to say that it should be another way because I cannot produce results that way. Now, on the other hand, when these people, let's say, take advantage of these positions to make sexual advances on someone else or do something inappropriate, I again believe that it is more a civil matter than a community matter because people are going to be attracted to each other naturally. And dance, even if we see it historically, especially social dancing, it came about to be so people can come together and meet each other and whatever that entails. People can try their shot. Of course, if someone is forceful towards someone, it's wrong to do it. It should be outlawed as it is.
Clearly.
And we should be opposed to that. And if you see someone, let's say, handling a girl along at the party, we should protect against that. And I believe it's rarer and rarer at every party. I rarely see guys now behaving badly.
You rarely see guys behaving badly.
Not badly in, let's say, but badly in the way that they grab girls and do stuff like that. They're always expelled from the scene pretty much quickly. They don't last long. They do it for 1 or 2 parties and then they get out of the scene. People don't like them. Even places don't let these guys in anymore and stuff like that. And I think that's a step in the good direction. But when we're talking about groups, we go back to the point, I believe these are not public property. Communities should not police how a group runs. We should be informed of how things are and people should make their own choices.
But what about the situation where, let's say, female dancers in a team are incentivized to have intimate relations with their director because the director has made clear that this will give them better opportunities in the team?
Yeah, but that's in every line of work. How can we protect from that without segregating the genders. Where do you draw the line? Can we say that makeup is a bad thing to do because it might sexually provoke some guys and they give you pretty much a more favorable position or treatment? Where do you draw the line? It's kind of tricky, and I don't believe as a community we should police that thing. We should police abusive behaviors, but more objectively abusive. Someone preventing you from doing something, or someone, let's say, becoming verbally abusive to you. But let's say a girl wants to take advantage of that. And I like you also as a director. I like you as a guy, and I want to sleep with you for whatever reason. And that also gives her a favorable position in that sense. Is that okay then?
It's definitely always a gray area. What one could advocate for is that you can say, like, of course, there are certain lines. Hypothetically, if you speak about scenarios, of course, forcing yourself onto anybody or ruling over somebody's free will is always wrong. However, there's a lot of gray areas. We have heard a lot of women speak up about feeling psychologically pressured, even though they have, of course, a free choice, but pressured into considering or having to trade off different incentives or choices. So for example, they might think, I want to achieve at the top level, but if I do that, I might have to sacrifice certain things. For example, I might have to be flirty with certain organizers, or I might have to act nice to some people that have different interests than what I want. You create a situation in which girls might have to choose between, they might have to trade them off. And of course, it's not always as clear cut.
But life is full of trades and choices like that. The beautiful thing, sorry to interrupt you again, but the thing is that I believe more in personal power, right? I have the power to choose what I like and what I don't. If I see something that I don't like, I don't want to trade up my, let's say, my character or who I like or who I don't in order to work. Some people are willing to do that. That's why these people continue to keep doing that, because there are people who choose to do that in order to get ahead. And we cannot penalize this. Penalize, that's the correct word.
For you, it sounds like where you draw the border of what's acceptable and not is whatever civil law, let's say, whatever the laws in your environment, which of course can be considered also a bit arbitrary because that just happens to be where you live and what the values are.
Of course. But let's say in the Western societies, pretty much it's the same.
But isn't it fair to say that as a dance community, you might have different values than a general society? You might, even because it's such a sensitive environment where there's so much interaction and there's a lot of opportunities to get to know each other, a lot of cases of intimacy where you want to be extra careful that people feel respected and safe. So as a community, you might have a bit stricter values. As a community, you give power to certain people.
Who is the authority to judge that? Look at us. We are both in this scene and we don't exactly agree on many points. Who is the authority to say where the line should be drawn? What I'm saying is that a lot of people will use it because they're not, let's say, there artistically to get ahead, and use it as a PR thing to get more out of it. I agree with the whole premise of what you're saying, but I don't believe that it can be implemented fairly.
For me, what clashes a bit is that on one hand, you say people need to make their own decisions. They are responsible for their own actions. So if they do something that later they consider to have crossed the line, maybe it's up to them to not have been naive in the first place. But at the same time, you say when people come out and provide the information that's vital for other people to be individuals with their own choices, you say that they're just doing it for PR and that it's not necessary.
No, I said people should speak up if they feel whatever that is. I'm saying that as a community, we should not take what they say as a fact without checking what actually is happening. Because I see the direction of people going that way. Because someone said something, we should automatically believe it. And I've seen people lose, I haven't seen it in the salsa scene yet, but let's say in the US where these things are more prevalent, I've seen people lose jobs over simply accusations, which I think it's not fair. And maybe we should be careful how we implement these, let's say these groups that try to advocate for these things, not to use them as a weapon. That's what I think is going to happen. Yeah. Some people will use it as a weapon, and even the fair cases are going to get ignored because something really trivial can be used to do harm to one person's reputation or whatever. I think it cannot be implemented fairly without having these problems. That's my the whole problem with it.
I think everybody will agree that there shouldn't be like a police or a court, but in the end, it's more like a democratic system in which the more people voice concerns over certain kind of dynamics
but let's take the thing that with microphones. Did you see the video that the one that
yes
she takes a girl? It was a bad move. Nobody can argue that. But you had people in the comments.
People argue it.
They like the move.
Oh, that it's fine. Maybe poorly executed, but the move is fine.
The move, yes. I can even agree to that because Cubans used to do it all the time. If you see old Cuban salsa, they do it all the time. I wouldn't say it's degrading, but the way it was executed, it was because he touched your face. But at the same time, I didn't feel like he intended to touch your face. He wanted to do it. I look the other way, so I can do it without even looking. And he accidentally did it. And even on points where there's a camera on you, you don't know how to react. You try to play it cool. I believe it was something like that. Even though I wouldn't do that move. But you had people in the comments saying that now Michael Fons is abusive. You should cancel him. El Sol shouldn't invite him again. It can go out of hand really quick. And we're talking now about Michael Fons, who has offered so much at the scene. He's allowed to make mistakes. People should not judge his character because of your move.
I guess mistakes is not really the point of contention. It's more what's the intention and the underlying feeling of respect, which of course you cannot tell directly from a video, but people infer from such a video that there is a lack of care and respect for other people. And that's where the feeling comes from.
I think that's a presupposition that you cannot judge from a simple move. I believe it's unfair to an artist. And people, because they see a lot of good artists, they see them as gods, in a sense. They see them as these perfect people who cannot do no wrong. And when something negative comes about someone like this, people tend to believe it more naturally because they want to humanize them and to feel naturally more close to them. You see, I don't dance like this, but I'm a good person because I don't do this move. People are more inclined to believe bad stuff about
people
stars.
Like to tear down people with big names.
I believe it plays a part as well. I'm not saying that it's not a fair point to not point out that it's a bad move. But on the same time, we have to be fair.
Even if somebody has meant a lot to the scene and they've done a lot to develop the community, how many of these incidents for you would it take to cross a line and say, now I clearly see that you are not willing to further contribute, or at least you put yourself in a position where you see yourself as better and let's say other people not as deserving of your respect?
Well, now we go into personal opinions. I don't believe everybody should think like that. But for me, I can separate the artist from the personality or from the human. I believe someone can offer a lot, let's say artistically or dance-wise, and still be a city person. I wouldn't care as much. Now, if someone goes a lot against my principles, I wouldn't choose to hang out with him. I wouldn't choose to work with him, but I can still respect what he does with his art form. I wouldn't want people to cancel him or to stop inviting him or her to events, but I wouldn't choose to work with them together. And I think that's a personal choice. Again, who you line up with, who you have the same mentality, and who you have the same principles. But as long as we are not being, again, like we said before, abusive in as if there is such a thing, an objective way of being abusive, like restricting someone's freedom to do something.
Of course, very fair point. At some point, it comes down, it's a subjective thing. When does it cross your principles? And I can imagine that in the case you mentioned before of the video we were discussing, it might cross other people's principles. Let's say the majority of the scene says, okay, this crosses my principles to put your hand in somebody's face and not apologize for it.
And maybe they did after the video. We don't really know. That's what I'm saying. In these cases, we don't have all the details, at least not up front. And even the girl who was in the video posted it in her stories, and she said, I had fun with the dance, I didn't like the move, but I had fun. There's a comment of her. People choose to ignore it. We tend to, what's the correct word? We tend to impose our views on what other people are feeling while we don't have the full picture. Maybe she had fun. And in a sense, people used to do these moves a lot back in the day. And I am from Greece. I cannot judge a Cuban artist doing something that a lot of Cubans are doing traditionally as a degrading move. For me, it's kind of cultural appropriation, if we can say that.
I think it's a very good thing to be respectful towards the culture, especially since it's a culture that we are taking from. Some people even call it cultural appropriation, especially if you start dictating how you're supposed to do certain things. But in another way, even the culture we take from, it's a constantly evolving thing. If you consider the roots of salsa, even if you consider the other Afro-Cuban dances, it's something of the last 100, maybe 150 years where most of the development has taken place. It's also in constant evolution.
You can even take it as far back as, let's say, in the 1800s, when before the Spanish conquerors went to Cuba, that they brought danzón, and before that, danzón was like a type of valse. So you can trace it back to Europe again, so there is no end to it.
I think it's always difficult to pick a certain point in time and say that's how it was supposed to be, and if we change it from that, then we are appropriating the culture. I am a big proponent of educating everybody and understanding where the art that they practice comes from, or the students, what they are learning. I think that's extremely important. But I also think that an art has to evolve with the values around it, let's say, of the society it's in.
Okay.
If something was acceptable maybe 50 years ago in Cuba, the question is it also acceptable in the culture today, necessarily?
Sure, I can agree with that. Coming from, it's a tricky point to discuss. While I agree with what you said, at the same time, I think one should have enough knowledge to make that decision. And it's not up to the individual who's only just a couple of years in the scene, who's gone to a couple of socials and just says something he doesn't really understand. I think it should be from people who really studied this thing, and they have reasons why something is inappropriate and not. If someone just dances, let's say not even 2 years, or 5 or maybe even more years, but they haven't really studied the dance and the history and the roots of everything, they're not really in a position to judge what's appropriate or what not.
There are some things that are common sense, right? There's a lot of gray area, but we can imagine easily cases where even if you know nothing about the dance, you can judge that something is inappropriate. Grabbing somebody.
That's rather subjective.
Grabbing somebody's ass or kissing them without their consent.
Of course.
There's a lot of things
but these were never actually popular for, let's say, even traditional people to do. I don't believe there is a bar somewhere in Mexico where there is a guy who grabs everybody's ass and everybody, hey, go ahead, dude.
Well, except no, but the point that I'm trying more to contest is even if somebody doesn't understand where it comes from, even if they don't know anything about it, like, oh, somebody gets their face very close to yours. You don't know if it's the culture or not, but you can say that in the system of values where you're in now, that is not acceptable, regardless of where the original art comes from.
Again, we go back to the same point as before. Can you police that? And how do you do it? People are going to flirt and going to meet each other. When do you know when it is consensual and when it is not?
I think like it's a bit of a natural process again, where it's democratic. If the majority of people agrees with a certain type of behavior or finds that in their set of values, certain types of behavior is not accepted, then they can speak up about it and they can try to move the culture of the scene into a space where it reflects more their values.
We can also go back again at personal choice. If a lot of people don't choose to dance with these girls or guys who behave inappropriate, these people will fall out of the scene.
Exactly.
So if we educate people, in a sense, to make better and more informed choices, it's gonna correct itself.
But it sounds like you say people should not complain about a culture that's not theirs. But at the same time, how is there going to be any change and this correction that you talk about if they cannot speak up?
It happens naturally, but we cannot penalize particular moves or movesets, or let's say at a bar setting where there is no dance involved, touching someone by the waist is inappropriate. And if we extrapolate that to the dancing, or let's say in 20 years in the future, that becomes widely inappropriate. Should we just dance by looking at each other, but not touching at all? I know it's an extreme point to make, but I'm trying to make the point that we should evaluate things while we have the knowledge to do it, not someone who hasn't been in the scene for a while.
I know it's you say it as an extreme case because you find it difficult to imagine, but if we truly were to be in a society where we would find it appalling to just touch somebody by the hips if it's not, for example, your loved ones, if you do it in a dance, I think in such a society, well, I hope it wouldn't be that extreme. But if that's the values of society, then I think that in a dance where that does happen, you should be extra mindful and extra aware of the consent that you give to each other if you find it inappropriate. Again, I do think, even though this is maybe not a case that will come to fruition, I hope, it is still something where there should be awareness and people should be comfortable.
But I think there are not so many cases anymore of people behaving widely inappropriate. You always will have some people who are not really socially aware or know how to communicate properly. And our scene attracts a lot of this kind of people because they find it as a way to meet more people because they have trouble meeting them in, let's say, everyday life. So we're always going to have these type of people. And I tend to believe that there are not so many cases anymore, that the scene has been correcting itself and people tend to not associate it with these kind of people. So they tend to not stay in the scene for long.
Do you think there has already been a change in the scene in the sense of providing more protection to, let's say, vulnerable or women? You think but you think that it's been enough, or like
I don't know if it's gonna be, let's say, never any case whatsoever sometime in the future. I don't believe there won't be any robberies in the future, let's say, at all. I believe there will be always bad apples, but as a community, we strive for the best. I think everybody educates his or her students to behave properly on the dance floor. And I believe it's going on the right direction. We don't have to focus on it so much all the time because I think it's less of a problem anymore.
I find it interesting because a lot of the movements that we see going on, they are quite recent. And let's say 5 years ago, there was much less discourse. But you say that, we've already achieved where we want to be.
Half of the cases are not really cases. There was an allegation about some directors in New York last year. And the guy who made the allegations, or girl, it was actually a fake account, came around and said that, okay, these allegations are actually not true. But some damage was already done. So that's why I say you need proof for these kind of things. And I can only think of one case where there was hard proof, and this guy is not working anymore. I can tell you after the video. No. I guess you already know, but I cannot think of another case because some things are quite subjective. We have the problem that I told you before. Maybe one people is jaded with one another and they don't want the responsibility of having failed on the team. And maybe something else happened and they want to put the blame on that. Or maybe there are different reasons why the group didn't end up working or whatever. So it's difficult to judge these things. And that's why I say people should speak up, but we should invest when something is happening and not take everybody's word for granted. Even if someone defends himself or even someone accuses one another. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I feel about the whole thing.
All right. Just to get back a little bit on the female leadership part, before we said that what you think is most important is that it's just merit-based.
Yes.
But also you agree that we can have more empowerment for women to be able to take risks and bigger steps. Do you see a scenario in which our salsa scene, let's say, sees more equality in terms of female leaders with men? Should we aim to shape the scene in such a way that we provide these opportunities for women to take leadership roles?
Opportunities, yes. But we should not judge the result based on that. I mean, let's say that we have 10 groups and 9 of the leaders of the groups are guys. We should not say that, okay, now we need 9 groups of female leaders just to make it equal. It should always be based on what you provide and what you can offer to a group. But we can have opportunities for people to make these groups. And I think everybody can make a group. I can be male or female and start a group tomorrow. I don't believe that we have with whatever group that is. I believe that dance schools are not public property. Everybody should run it with whoever they need to be. And if I tend to believe that I need more guys on my group, I will get more guys. Or in my school as a teacher or whatever. Everybody should do what works for them.
Would you say that in certain ways already from like an early stage, we are telling people their value with, for example, how much they get paid? If we see in dance schools, often we see that leaders in classes, they are offered higher wages. Even
But
I've even
they
heard a
offer
lot
more.
of I've even heard a lot of examples of women who, well, have more experience and they offer more to the classes. Even in their preparations, they have the majority to say on how to structure the class. But just because historically leads are paid more, maybe even double that of the follow.
I haven't seen such a case in my career at least, but most of the times that the guy is getting paid more, he's offering more. And let's look at it from an economic sense. Girls are more in the scene. They are the majority. Okay? Especially we're talking about dance, mostly girls do the dancing. Guys are more rare, especially good guys who can dance good. So in that sense, what is rare is going to be more valuable. So if you cannot find a good teacher to teach and you need one and he has a lot of choices, you're going to pay him more. Again, I believe it's a matter of value. And in another reason, I believe it's because mostly guys can do partner work. I'm not saying there are not good girls who can do partner work, but it's mostly a male, not a male, a lead thing. Because you start making small choreographies when you're social dancing. Actually, every dance is like a small choreo. You're trying to put stuff together. So you always try to improve on that part. While followers have a more passive role.
So in a sense, like the salsa scene intrinsically is quite a patriarchal system.
Yes. You have the leader and you have the follower. I'm not saying that one is better than the other because people hear leader and they automatically think better. A leader is someone who is more capable to bring results. But if you don't have a good follower, you cannot lead properly. And there should be what's the correct word? A symbiotic relationship. I'm not better than you because I lead. I'm just more, let's say, capable to lead. And you trust me that I want your own good. And people's relationship and the whole patriarchy thing that I believe should be like this. People should choose someone who they find capable to lead them. Not to, I don't have to force it on you. I'm against force in any way. I tend to believe personally that males are more logically and they have better people skills in that sense. So they can drive a team more to what needs to be done. But it's also many women who can do that.
Aren't you afraid that, believing that this is the structure, how it works best, also creates a feedback loop in which we tend to believe less in possibilities of female leadership being effective?
It might have, but again, on the same note, there is an option for someone to run a team as he seems fit. And if the other way is a better one, time will tell what
you want to be proven wrong, right? We want to see the female leader stepping up.
Let's do it, girls.
Creating teams.
There are quite a few strong teams led by girls. I believe that the most competitive partner work teams are led by guys. But I believe, again, it's not because of leadership qualities. It's more of the way that the dance is structured. Because the guy has to lead the routine. They come up with more ideas easier. But of course, if you don't have a good follower who knows proper technique of how to do it, it's not doable. I also believe that because we're always talking about the top 1%, we never talk about the other guys, and there are so many guys who are getting paid less than a lot of women who are trying to become semi-famous or famous for many years. We're always comparing the top, which tend to be more guys because in order to get there in any field, you need to be crazy. You need to risk a lot and you need to dedicate your whole life to it. And most of the times, these are guys because we are more, this is actually documented. We are more aggressively looking to take risks to get more reward.
Of course, it's also more attractive to take these risks if you are living in a system that historically already favors your opportunities.
I disagree with that. I mean, in what sense there is a system?
In what sense there is a system?
Yes. Do we believe that there is a group of guys somewhere in the back of a room and say, girls shouldn't close their showcase tonight.
No,
I
that's
don't
not
believe
it.
that's the
That's
case.
that's not it. But if you look at a lot of the big events, it is more often men that are already in those positions. Also, the people with voices in the scene
But
are
maybe
often men.
these are people who are more capable. I mean, I know one of the biggest events in Europe is led by a group of women,
Amazing.
and it's
Yeah.
really successful. So
Yeah.
there is no point
Maybe
to.
it's also often also a bit of a chicken and egg problem, right? Like, do we have a patriarchal system like where men are favored because they are?
I would argue that we have these opportunities today because of a patriarchal system that existed long before. Women have more freedom today because of patriarchy.
That's a rabbit hole that we're going to go into for another time, I think.
For sure, yes. I got some more controversial opinions on that matter.
But for now, I think we're reaching the end of this podcast. So if anybody hears any other interesting topics coming up here or has other questions, of course, just drop it down below in the comments, maybe for a second time.
Be sure
We
to
can
send me a
dive
message
deeper.
on my Instagram. I always reply.
And Ilias a message. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
making
man.
time today
Thank you for
to
having me.
discussing some of these topics. Sitting here in the beautiful sunset, I think we started with the sun in our faces and now we're sitting here in the shadow and it's getting cold already. I aim to have this podcast out on YouTube, on Spotify, and also post
Be sure
some
to follow,
excerpts on
subscribe.
Instagram.
Be sure to
Drop a
catch
like.
Nando on the dance floor.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
My man is a killer.
That would be great. All right, thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
And see you soon.